All right, we'll call the committee of the whole meeting to order. First thing would be adoption of the agenda.
Move. Second.
On adoption, all those in favor, motion is carried. Delegation this afternoon from the Economic Development Society. We have John Watson and Jamie Van Struth. Jamie is going to present to us on the strategic plan update as well as some of the aspects of downtown Comox being the focus of their recent discussions. So Jamie, welcome, and thank you for coming here today.
Thanks. You all see? What I'd like to do when I start my presentations in economic development is just give a brief comment on why we're doing this. I think a lot of times economists get accused of caring only about income and jobs, but that's really just a means to an end. And one of the things that I think best captures this is the Human Development Report from the UN, which looks at human development in 3 dimensions: health, access to knowledge, and standard of living, which is most directly related to the economy, but all of them are enhanced by economic development. And I won't read this long quote. This is a quote from the founder of the Human Development Report talking about the purpose is to enlarge people's choices. When you have a good job, you have a higher income, you opens up whole new worlds of opportunity to you, including things like knowledge, nutrition, health services, security, leisure, all those sort of good things that we like in our day-to-day lives. So with that as a backdrop, I just wanted to just jump right into the strategy update process that we're going through. We're building on a previous economic development strategy done in 2005. 2011 was a major work plan. And those are some of the steps that we're going through, some of the background analysis and lit review, workshops with the CBED's board, doing some business focus groups, a business survey, with the focus on the town of Comox component of the strategy. We're doing some meetings with staff, with council, and some others to come, and aiming for a draft report early December. So just to frame this within the town's current direction, within the framework of the OCP, there's some references to economic development, speaking to the town's focus and support. Some of the key drivers identified there are CFB, which is a 19-wing, the airport, health services, tourism, all those things would already be part of the regional strategy. They're already sort of regional level assets, but they're certainly part of the Comox specific strategy as well. And the OCP also mentions support for the Comox First Nation. The second fit with the town, the strategic plan. There's a council priority to review and consider basically processing times for development applications, revitalizing the downtown core, and committing to work with stakeholders to bring more excitement, more people, more economic opportunities. So all of those things are very much consistent with what we're doing in the regional economic development strategy. So how I'm going to do my presentation, I'm just going to walk you through what the final product will look like, and I'll identify sort of how the Comox part of it will fit in there. So if you think of the final economic development strategy report, well, basically introduction, the process, mission, objectives. Then we get into a competitive analysis, and that's based on a lot of background economic and statistical work that is ongoing. Some of it's done, some more still to come. And there's been a lot of previous work in the Comox Valley done, sector-specific, region-wide, all sorts of different groups. There's a whole volume of material in as well as a lit review. I just wanted to highlight some of the key, findings from the economic analysis. If you look at population projections, this is the BC Stats projections for the entire Comox Valley through 2035, showing very strong growth. In terms of percentage increase, it's projected to be the second fastest growing regional district in BC. And, but I think also a very important point to point out, this lower line here, this is just the 25 to 54-year-old population. So these are the core working age people. And even though there's a lot of places in BC that are continuing to grow, they are not necessarily growing on this key working age population. In some cases, they're even in decline. So I think it's a really positive sign that I think there's going to be labor shortages and challenges everywhere, but at least according to these projections, it's going to be less of a challenge here. There's still younger people staying here and moving here. Also, this is the kind of data that's, we can't get this specifically for the town of Comox, this one in particular. But wherever we can, we're going to be adding some Comox-specific information. Whoops, that's going too fast. A lot of discussion with the CBED's board about sources of income, just looking at the different demographic profile here. So in terms of total incomes based on actual tax returns, Comox Valley is the orange bars, 58% from employment, 25% from pensions. So you see that's compared to BC, there's 11% less unemployment, 11% more on pensions. This is actually more similar to a typical Vancouver Island distribution. I will pull out some numbers for Comox on this one. We looked at average income of different types. So when you fill out your tax return, you put different lines for employment income, pension income, and investment income, all those sort of things. So among people who had employment income, the average was $30,500, which was 17% lower than the BC average in 2009. And in terms of 29 regional districts in BC, the Comox Valley ranks 21st. So the employment income is a real challenge here for sure. And you can see that the contrast there with pension income, average is $23,000. Of course, there's fewer people with pension income, but those that do often have a fairly decent pension. It's 15% higher than the BC average and ranks second in BC. Now, I think that's partly due to wealthier people retiring here from Alberta or wherever. I think it's also partly due to there's a very high public sector component of the economy here from the base and elsewhere that people retiring here have a good public sector pension. Looking at average weekly wages, I'm going to contrast this with the next slide. I think we'll go to the next slide first. This is the leading employment sectors in the Comox Valley as of 2006. I could do some of this stuff with the town of Comox. I tend to think of the labor force as being so immutable across boundaries. It's not necessarily that relevant. But just some of the key sectors, retail, trade, healthcare, public administration, accommodation, food, the tourism, all of these are more concentrated here than the rest of BC. And I know the data is old. It's the best we have so far until next year. If I just go back to the average weekly wages, it's no surprise the average employment income is lower when you have things like accommodation, food services, agriculture, retail, and wholesale trade being some of the lowest paying sectors. So I think this is one of the challenges in the strategy overall, is to get more activity happening, more high value activity in these sort of sectors, as well as getting more of some of the higher paying sectors as well. Just one more quick slide. This is a benchmarking ranking BC again ranking the Comox Valley among BC's 29 regional districts in per capita building permit values. This comes from a big investor profile study we did earlier last year that ranked the valley according to all sorts of different things. The per capita building permits, you can see from about 2002 to 2006, it was one of the top 3 or 4 or 5 in BC. Dropped a little bit in the last couple of years. I'm going to update this, but it's I just got to get all the numbers from the other regional districts. But comparing this is 2009 to 2011, so since that last chart, this top orange line is the Comox Valley, so it's rebounded quicker. This one is BC, this one is the rest of Vancouver Island Coast. So certainly compared to the rest of the island, the Comox Valley has rebounded much quicker from the lows of 2009. And again, I can do some Comox specific stuff with this one. So going back to my strategy outline, we're also doing a lot of consultation. There was a BIA meeting happened here before I was involved in the project. We had the town staff last month. We're doing the meeting today. And we're going to have some sort of issue-specific meetings as well coming up. This is a key strategic advantage piece we put together at the Lit Review and some other sources so far. This is sort of a Comox Valley-wide. But I wanted to identify this just as some of the key regional-wide advantages are also the ones that show up here. So health services, the airport, obviously. Two in particular, and tourism also a strong connection here. This is some of the feedback we've gotten from the Comox-specific meetings and consultations so far, highlighting the struggling downtown area. The hospital site, once it's vacated, potential opportunity to do something new there, whether health-related or maybe something else. Looking at the marinas and the harbor as a core asset. Tourism potential. There's a lot of discussion in the last meeting with staff about more linkages, waterfront to downtown, and also packaging within the region. And just some of the discussions we had with the airport, recognizing the vital impact it has on the regional economy as well as the economy of the town of Comox. It's a huge part of supporting prosperity and vitality we already have here. And at 19 at least has been declining in terms of employment. And it's worth considering what would happen if that ever went away and what impact that would have on the region and the town. So back to my outline. After the consultation, we get into the final strategies. So there's, under each strategy, there'll be specific tactics. Not everything is done by CBEDS. Some things, the lead responsibility is the town or the region or the other municipalities. Some is private sector groups. We identify performance measurements to the degree possible. It's very difficult in economic development to say this happened because we did this. You can't necessarily say, X jobs were created because CBES did a specific thing, but you try as much as you can to link the programs to some measurable outcomes. And I think what we're going to do, we haven't figured exactly how we're going to structure this, but certainly in all the strategies that are related to key Comox assets, whether it's the airport or harbor or some of the tourism stuff, we'll be highlighting some Comox-specific actions within those. And I think we'll also have a section in the report that sort of pulls all the Comox-related stuff together. So, for example, common economic development strategy is business retention and expansion, where you have regular visitation with businesses, just listening to their issues, staying on top of their concerns and highlighting problem areas. Perhaps there's a recommendation to do a specific focus on some of the downtown Comox businesses. For example, I don't know that yet, but that's one of the things that might come out as a Comox-specific tactic. And I think that was it. So you're welcome for questions.
Okay, thanks for the overview, Jamie. Questions for Jamie at this time? Members of the council? John, do you wish to add anything to this?
Just that we're starting the process. Quick overview, obviously, given the time constraints and whatnot, I'd echo some of the comments or highlight a couple of comments. Most of you, I think, have been around the table long enough to have participated in some of the economic development planning that's gone on either here at the town or you've been involved at the economic development table, regional district table, so that's great examples. And we look at the consultation piece. There's been some great feedback and input from town staff so far. We'll continue through that process. We're looking at setting up a little bit of a back and forth that we can do either one-on-one or small groups with the town council to fill out some of the priorities and objectives. I think a lot of those discussions, what we're trying to do is get a little bit more detail from discussions we've already had via your own involvement with community groups, or more perhaps officially the community plan and the strategic planning process. So that step is going to come. One of the things that I stress is that these processes allow us to take a step back. We're creating a plan of action for ideally 5 years, perhaps some of the items you even look a little bit further. And it allows us to step back as we build it and look at some of the key risks, not just the opportunities and the priorities. So I think understanding, at least to a certain degree, certainly understanding to make a decision that we want to know more, or perhaps we don't need to know anymore. We need to look at the medical services sector and understand what that looks like in the future of the towns. The hospital announcement is significant, and so how does that impact the town? Does it impact the town now? What's the future economy going to look like? Is there a change? These are some of the areas where we want to focus in on. Jamie's noted the importance of the airport. We all know how important it is, but we really want to try and get a sense of the economic importance to the town of that gateway, so that we can reference it and understand that importance, and then build some strategies and support tactics as a town and as an ECDEB office to ensure that we're leveraging it the best we can, and from a retention perspective, making sure we don't have problems. And we're well aware of some of the issues up there with respect to the current stuff in the paper. But that 19 wing is another thing. I often sit back when I get the time and I look at the impact of 19 wing just as I see it day by day in the community. This one, and I'm sure all of you have either family, friends, business colleagues, etc., that are impacted by the wing. But I'm not so sure our office or our past economic development planning processes have really clearly identified the impact of 19 wing. And in this case, this is a key town and regional asset. I think we're fairly good on the cultural stuff, on the tourism, economic impacts and different things, agriculture. But I think that's another area of focus. So 2 areas there. On the sector, there was a slide that spoke to some of the items that have been identified already, and I think we've seen these come up. Richard and I have had many discussions, town staff and others, around the marina and the accessibility and the way in which we can tie those together. And so we want to really focus in on that as well and suggest some tactics for which that could maybe occur. These are some of the going forward steps over the next 6 weeks. So we're looking forward to bring Following a bit of one back and forth with staff and council, then we were looking at bringing a draft report back first part of December.
Great.
So,
Well, that will work nicely with our review of our own strategic plan as well as we embark on our budget process. No doubt there will be some action items for the town to consider as well as for the BIA to look at. Certainly the BIA has played a role to kick this off, and there are a number of things I'm sure that they're already doing and that they're looking forward to partnerships to achieve other results. So we'll no doubt, I guess, continue to deal with them. You're in contact through the staff, I assume, and through our own council representation there at the BIA level. Barbara?
Yes, and thank you, Brian, thank you for the presentation. The whole aspect of retention, and that I think it's about 80%, isn't it, of employment is by the businesses that you actually already have. So the importance of a strategy that looks at how do you retain what you have as well as build on it. And I know some communities, and I think Powell River might be one of them, where they actually actively work with the business community and consult with them and look at, what's the impediment to moving ahead, and then they become, the advocate for how that change can happen. And I think it's a very intensive process. Is that something that is workable, or is that something that we could look at?
Yes, that program does exist already to some
Yeah, I
degree.
could speak to our program, but go ahead and speak to
Yeah, no, I
framework.
would just support what you said. It's definitely the majority of job growth is definitely comes from companies that are already here, that are already committed to the community, and helping them expand and deal with their problems is, definitely a high priority. And
We have a fairly high focus on retention issues and working with local business. In fact, if you look across how we allocate our resources at our office, it's by far 70-80% of what we do. We often get a lot of requests, either individual interested citizen or business or someone asking us to go and track the next biggest manufacturing facility, for example. And it just simply isn't where we spend a lot of our time. So we're currently fairly heavily focused in retention and expansion activities with local companies, be it working on export, bringing in speakers for training, workshops, that kind of thing, or one-on-one business support. So that's going to be a heavy part of the plan. Certainly regionally, but also here in Comox.
Great, thank you.
Any further questions or comments at this time? Well, thank you for bringing us an update, and we look forward to seeing as the report is generated and as we work through our own plans. I know you'll work with our staff and members of council as required. So thank you again, gentlemen. All right, so we'll move on to departmental reports. For receipts at page 5, the bylaw enforcement summary for the third quarter.
Move receipt.
Second. On receipt then, all those in favor? Motion is carried. Any comments, questions for staff? Yes?
On page 5, we have a Comox Avenue to PXO in FR failed to remain PD accident. I have no idea what that means. Anybody else know what that means?
Clerk?
It's been cut off. So PXO is the front, it's probably saying, interesting. I haven't actually spoken to Greg about that one and why interesting.
Apparently results.
Well, and it's an other. Anyway, I just didn't know what that one was.
Shall we begin to practice on that? Yes, Bart?
Yeah, and I had a couple of those too. The overloaded dwelling, 4218. I don't know if that's somebody who collects a lot of stuff and can't declutter.
That one, there's a number of residents at that dwelling and deal with different issues such as traffic issues, parking issues, and things of that sort.
Overloaded with people, you're saying?
Overloaded.
I grew up in a house with 11 feet.
And the other one was the Church Street, the rats. And I just wondered what involvement the town would have. That was 3615, was resolved in August.
Which page are you
Page 5.
There was a compost issue on Church Street, so it was a neighbor who had complained about someone having rats due to the compost.
So there was something that we could do to make the environment less habitable.
That's right.
for rats.
Yeah, yeah.
Wonderful. And the other question I had was around, I just noticed that the water rates and regulations bylaw, the RD water rates and regulations bylaws, there's quite a few of those. So I guess that our bylaw enforcement officer goes around checking, are these checks from him or from people phoning in?
We actually have a contract with the regional district, so we share a bylaw enforcement officer who does do patrols. And more education related, if he notices that people are using water on their off days or off times, then they go and read information and talk to them.
Okay, great.
Councillor Grant?
I looked at that and I was concerned about it until I stopped and analyzed it. And what happened was the regional district did not go to stage 2 watering restrictions in June like they normally do. And so everybody in the town of Comox, including myself, would have had their sprinkler system to go on, you know, as per stage 2 watering restrictions.
Twice a week.
And, yeah, twice a week. And instead they were allowed to do it every second day. So they were probably using far less water than they normally would have. But they had their sprinkler systems that set the stage 2 watering restrictions. So I don't think it's a matter that we had a whole bunch of our citizens violating the law. They were using less water, but just not on the right days.
There were some in September, obviously, that related to stage 3, which
When we went to
a whole other
stage
matter altogether. But again, those, the education approach, I think, is one that we've applied. So, yes, Councilor Fletcher?
Just on page 6, I'm curious, there's 2 that are noted as illegal suites, and one says 7 addresses in the area. I'm just curious, so what is the process if an illegal suite is found?
If an illegal suite is found, then we do investigate and determine whether or not it is illegal and how to bring it into conformance with current building and zoning bylaws.
So it may be that physically the structure doesn't meet it, or it may just be they have to apply for the permit.
Usually it's a result of a complaint that there are tenants in a suite, and then we do investigate to determine whether or not they do have the required permits, and it is a building permit type issue.
Generally, it's to do with plug-ins, fire doors, drywall thickness, that kind of stuff.
And there were 7 in an area?
That's an area where we received, it was a complaint that that there were a number of suites in the area, and that we weren't being consistent with our application of water charges in that case. So if there's a suite, then we charge 2 fees for water.
Councilor Payne?
Yes, Shelley, for the benefit of those watching, citizens at home as well, can you refresh council members here what happens with noisy party situations? The RCMP were called, it's reported eventually to the town. What can the bylaw officer and the town of Comox do in those situations?
Generally, what the bylaw officer likes to do is work with both parties, the complainant and the other residents in question, to try and bring them into compliance. Voluntary compliance is always the best. We work with the RCMP too, of course, because in a number of cases these complaints come in after hours when the law enforcement officer isn't working, keeping logs. There's a lot of back and forth in those cases.
So neighbors should be encouraged to call the town even after the fact in situations like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything further? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Public Works Department. report for the third quarter, capital and operational status.
Move receipt.
Second?
Receipt then, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Our municipal engineer is here. If there's any questions, comments?
Nothing to talk about, it's all complete. Everything's done.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. And we have then for receipt the Parks and Building Maintenance report for the third quarter.
Move receipt.
Second?
On receipt, all those in favor? Motion's carried. And we have our Parks and Building Maintenance Supervisor here with his job at the marina as well. So he's here to answer any questions. If you have any comments. Yes.
It's a quick one, and it certainly looks good. And I just wondered whether we could just call the Anderton Park Outdoor Senior Fitness Circuit the Anderton Park Outdoor Fitness Circuit, and take the senior out, because it is for anyone over 13, and I think it would encourage a wider use, and just that sense of we are a town of many ages, and I certainly, when the weather was good, not in the rain, I've seen loads of people of all ages on there. It's great.
Lots of kids.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Love it. All right. Well, I think that's been noted. And anything else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. So page 19, we have the report from our Deputy Corporate Administrator on off-leash dog parks.
Move receipt.
Thank you.
Second?
Receipt. All in favor? Motion's carried. And staff, as you know from the management report, are looking for direction from Council. The recommendation at this time is not to pursue development of an off-leash or leash optional park, but it's up to Council's direction, of course, as to how you wish to proceed. Yes, Councilor.
I took a trip up to Cumberland yesterday and visited their dog park, and it just looks like a simple thing that we could manage somehow. And I think it would be an asset for the town. I don't have a recommendation regarding whether it should be a fenced area. I know I came to the meeting prior to the election last year, and the discussion had come up, and I know Councillor Tom Grant had suggested a portion of Highland School. I would like to have the staff find a place to have a dog park in the town.
Councillor Grant.
Actually, we got quite a bit of pushback from the neighbors adjacent to that one area that I suggested. But I'm just wondering if we don't, if we can wait until the issue of the Northeast Woods is resolved, because the Northeast Woods would be an ideal off-leash park, but of course we can't label it an off-leash park because we don't own it, control it, or it's not in our hands. So, I like the idea of an off-leash dog park, and certainly that is a de facto off-leash dog park, because there's anywhere from 50 to 100 dogs go through there any given day. So I think at this time, I think we should just follow staff's instructions and do nothing until such time as we can get a lease or control on Northeast Woods.
All right, so Councillor Price and Grant and Fletcher.
Now everybody wants that.
Well, I certainly support what Councillor Swift said. I think that the idea of a fenced park is something that some people are looking for. It's a different facility than just having an area to run your dog. It's it's a safe area, and people see it as places where their animals can socialise. And so I would certainly like to see that we have some more public involvement in how we can go about it, and a suitable place to do it. I know people who do go from Comox to Cumberland to use the park there, and I certainly know that we have a lot of dogs in Comox, and certainly from door knocking there was very few doors without a dog behind them, and it was a number one issue that did come up. the Northeast Woods, the bulk of the Northeast Woods is a wildlife management area and under provincial control, and the province does not allow off-leash dogs in wildlife management areas. That being said, people do take their dogs there and they have them under control, and it doesn't seem to be a major issue, but we certainly couldn't be saying to people, go up there and run your dogs, because it's against provincial.
Well, there are parts of the Northeast Woods, certainly the parts that we're looking at with Comox First Nation, that are outside the wildlife management area. Councillor Grant, you're next.
Yeah, that was kind of the thought that I had too. I don't own a dog, and this is one of these issues that it behooves me because I don't know much about it at all, but I do know that in Cumberland, for instance, one of the things you want to worry about there is maintenance, liability, are some of the issues that you get. I think the mayor was mentioning to me today in Nanaimo that there was an incident in Nanaimo with a dog attacked in one of these things, and the mud and the dog feces and stuff in there was problematic, and that means we then have to take over the maintenance and control of that, which can be a problem. And that's what kind of got me to the optional dog park, and I thought the same way you did about the Northeast Woods, where it's actually being used that way now anyway. So it's a pretty easy transition to say, go ahead and do it. Take that, instead of having people breaking the law, allow them to do it, and do it on a trial basis is what came to my mind as a good idea anyway.
All right, I think Councillor Fletcher was next.
I think my comments have been said. Thank you.
Councillor McKinnon, anything to add to that debate?
I don't have a solution or a recommendation here. I will say, as an old age jogger going through the Northeast Woods regularly, I was there this morning. It can be unnerving sometimes with dogs coming at you, and I love dogs. And then the issue of legal liability as well is something I'm not an expert in, but certainly the town will have to look at there. It's just a shame there's not an area that we can't look at somewhere that might be shared. I'm sure we're going to get from folks that was not in my neighborhood, please, or not in my park, and that's the problem. Hats off to Cumberland for doing so. My comments.
The village of Cumberland, yes, have used baseball diamond that they didn't have use for. The city of Courtenay was looking at Harmston Park. I understand that they've had some consultation with that neighborhood, but I guess they've met resistance. The city of Nanaimo has a dozen, I think, or around that many off-leash dog parks, which are set aside as portions of their park system. The incident that happened the other day was in Bevan Park, I believe. The city of Victoria has really no dog parks per se, other than a leash optional area along the Dallas Road waterfront, which has caused some problems, and some other sort of park areas. The off-leash dog park does require more involvement, more maintenance, more obligation. The leash optional, simply a matter of signage and perhaps awareness. So there are different ways to go about it. I think the concern that I would have is taking on an obligation in a community which many people have options for getting their dogs out, whether inside or outside the town boundaries. There's portions of Goose Spit, Seal Bay, that you can have your dog off leash at most times of the year. And certainly people, if they want to, they can find those places. I think when we first heard this issue, our parks director said that there wasn't any suitable areas of our parks to consider, although there may be some areas they could look at on an ongoing basis. And it may be that with the areas that we're hopefully going to see in the Northeast Woods acquired for green space, that there might be outside that wildlife management area, an area that could be designated. So it may be something that we pursue at a later date. And I just remind you, I guess, that it is not part of our strategic plan. It's certainly not in our budget. And obviously there has been an interest expressed, but I would say it hasn't been a groundswell of support yet. There's been some interest, some against. We don't necessarily have to do anything at this point.
I would like to move the recommendation of our deputy administrator, and at this time, do nothing, but continue to, you know, at least have it, you know, in the back of my mind.
Okay, so has that been seconded? Is there a seconder for the recommendation?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, on that recommendation. Councilor Butcher.
Well, I guess I'm of the mindset that I would like to see staff continue to have this on their desk and on the radar. And I think that Councilor Grant sort of said, let's not do this, but keep it out there. And I don't think we can send staff that mixed a message, so I think.
I think that was part of the recommendation.
Well, let's let staff comment, CEO or deputy administrator, what you would do with that recommendation. if it's
Well,
passed.
the recommendation, as written by Shelley, would provide the direction that we wouldn't be looking to establish an off-leash or a leash optional area, but in terms of being front of mind or in the back of anything that we do, we would still be, it's something that we could look at and in terms of the Northeast Woods area, if we were to be successful in that sponsored Crown grant and work with KFN on a management plan for that area, maybe something like that would be considered in that. So I don't think it would be dismissed. It would just...
Councilor Grant.
Well, the recommendation that I put forward, it says that delaying action would allow staff more time to gauge community interest as well as identify and examine the feasibility of specific sites using the criteria identified above. And that was the recommendation that I made.
Okay. Well, the one that's...
The do-nothing recommendation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
On page 20 of your agenda. I didn't articulate it quite as well as Shelley did, but that's the recommendation.
That's what you meant.
Okay, well, and certainly the report would form part of that recommendation. Yes.
So just for clarification then, we're not moving the recommendation on page 19, or we're moving that but with the additional words and continue to explore as time and resources allow whether establishing a dog park in Comox is justifiable. That's part of the motion, is it? Or does that need to be moved as an amendment?
I think, based on what Councillor Tom Grant said, I think we can add that word, and if we give Shelley a moment, she'll read it back to us.
Okay.
Because I think it's consistent with what I understood it to be.
Yeah, I was just working some of the wording from the text on page 20. So the town of Comox not pursue the development of an off-leash or leash optional dog park at this time and continue to explore further options.
Well, further explore community, or further explore the feasibility of specific sites and
Yeah.
in regards to community interests.
and feasibility. Okay.
As long as we incorporate those community interests and specific sites, and we can encapsulate that, and it may be that there'll be another park that comes forward, other portions of park that come forward at some point. Yes?
Maybe we need to take the do-nothing piece of it and just say...
Well, that's not in the,
That's not in the motion.
resolution.
Well, that's not in the
That's just what you refer to on page 20.
Yeah, no, good point.
Yeah.
All right, anything further on the motion? You want to read it back to us?
That the town of Comox not pursue the development of an off-leash or a leash optional dog park at this time and continue to explore community interest and the feasibility of specific sites.
You okay with that?
Well, I guess what I would say, to take that first sentence out and just say that the staff continue to explore whatever came after that.
All right. Well, I guess that might make sense, but I'll ask the mover if that was the intention. Because
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
And if I may, can I ask, is it the community's expectation that we come back with?
Well, that's the question. Because the nuance here is that you're asking staff to either pursue it or not pursue it. I think what perhaps the motion was intended to do is say, look, don't make this a priority item, don't spend a whole lot more time, but as opportunities arise, as Northeast Woods and other areas become clearer, then perhaps it can work. If you are taking out the wording not pursue, then that may make a more positive, more priority motion on it. That's why we have to be careful with the reading. Because it is on our management report at this time. It wouldn't necessarily remain on the management report unless we were actively pursuing. Correct. So that's where staff needs clear direction. And I think we have a little bit of a difference in views here.
So should we go back and add those words back in that we just took out?
Well, we haven't taken anything out. We're still clarifying the motion.
Okay, fair enough.
And you see, staff have already done their investigation, and they came back and said we had nothing suitable. So there's no sense in them pursuing the same old parts. So I thought my motion is that if new opportunities come up, they would explore those, right? I mean, I know you don't like that word, that wording, do nothing, but there's nothing more to do at this time. They've explored all the options available, as I understand it, from the report, and that there's nothing suitable, so.
All right, so the motion, as I understand it, is going to be read up.
She just erased it all.
Again, the town of Comox not pursue the development of an off-leash or a leash optional dog park at this time, and continue to explore community interest and the feasibility of specific sites.
Okay. So I believe that's the motion that we can second.
Okay, and that makes more sense actually to me now with the explanation that we've gotten. So.
Well, it takes the wording and clarifies the motion. If you were to take out the not pursue, then it becomes a more positive obligation for staff to actually go and do more investigation. We've already looked at this twice, so the question. Yes.
And I think it's important the community interest mentioned in there, because the report does mention it is unclear to staff at this time whether there is enough interest in establishing a dog park in Comox. So I know with Cumberland it was the community who brought forward the suggestion. So I think the message is that if there is interest, that it would be good for people to bring that forward.
Great, absolutely. Anything further on that? On the question then? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you for that. Correspondence, we have the policing reports for August and September for receipt.
See?
Receipt then, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Arising out of those, it's more historical. I'll note that their RCMP youth camp is set to go for next spring March break, so that's been in the paper and the news today. We do that biannually, and we also have put on the agenda here today the request of Councillor McKinnon, the terms of reference for Youth Achievement Awards, honoring Red Cross Days. So, Councillor McKinnon, those are here for your discussion and your introduction of anything further.
Yes, briefly, just what the question. The reason I brought up was we'd like to move forward on this, and the committee that has some names at present, and so we wanted some clarifications in the next week or two to move forward on this. The suggestion of the committee is that if there's enough names to that these youth be recognized in December and June, and if the numbers warrant. Ideally, December at a regular council meeting, because some of these youth might be back if they're out of town in town, and they could be present. That we had questions about the protocols for proceeding. Is it required that we bring forward a list of names to an in-camera meeting and review those names first? I believe so, but they wanted to find out that answer. And and then the protocols of what would happen that day is that we'd like to recognize these youth at the beginning of a regular council meeting, and certainly my idea was that there'd be a short write-up for each candidate, and councillors here might have the choice of reading somebody that they might know, Councilor Romero, and those people are recognized, maybe a quick photo opportunity, then we get on with our regular council meeting.
That all sounds good. Any further from members of council? Councilor Fletcher?
Just a comment, I know we kind of played with this earlier, but who is eligible for these awards? I would like to see that it's the piece about is a current or former resident of Comox. What's key to me is that the individual has contributed significantly to the betterment of Comox. That's where, if they lived in Courtney or Area C, B, A,
It's already covered. It says or.
so, okay. So they don't have to have been a current or former.
Or.
Okay.
I think the word "or" covers that.
Councilor Graham?
Yeah, the only, and this looks like a really good program, actually. When it comes to how often are awards presented, I think that you have to be careful how many you give out, because you can water it down pretty fast so they become meaningless. So just, it says as qualified. Sometimes you want to make it a pretty special award by not giving out too many. So that would just be my only comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad idea to try to schedule it twice a year if you have that many, but also if you don't have any.
Thank Councilor Grant for that comment. I know that the committee, we talked about that. And some of the criteria, not for every category, but certainly for some, is that they achieve provincial status in a sport, say, at the gold, silver, bronze level, or a national status type of thing. Others are more subjective areas, community leadership and community contributions, but significant community contributions. And I think the intent is not to have an exhaustive list, but rather a special list. And finally, the people on the committee, I think we all agree that this is meant to be a connection with our community and youth, and to highlight and be proud of our youth in our community, and make that connection, and hopefully see that they're recognized by the town, and that they see the value in their town recognizing them as well.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing your list in the very near future. All right, anything further on that? Seeing none, we do have an in-camera meeting, so just give the public a reception now, get a community church. Those in favor? Motion's carried. Recess here until